Okay, so last time we talked about, we went through all the network stuff. You guys said you didn't have any questions, so I'll just keep moving on. If you do, just can. One of the things that comes up is how we connect to existing structures. So say, it's an existing, system down here. What I generally recommend is that existing systems would be their own pipe network. So just under here, under pipe network, see how we have storm proposed. If you have an existing system that you want to monitor, normally it's survey and you have information for it, you would want to come up to home and then create a pipe network based for that. So go to pipe network, create pipe network. You guys can follow along with this, and you just type in storm, EXIST. There's a couple of reasons here. Your storm network is going to be existing here, not proposed. And what that helps with is the styles, or then the existing styles, not proposed styles. A lot of times it's in an area you haven't graded, so maybe we'll just target the EG for that. And we're not going to do alignment. We're not going to do labels just like before. If you wanted to do a label, though, just to label the inlet name as you're laying it down, you can definitely select that here. That's what that will do. Basically, just add, as soon as you add a structure, just add the label automatically. The label and the structure are separate, just like always, but you can, it adds it in. It's just a little option, basically. I usually don't do that, but you can. Okay. And then in this scenario, we're just going to say, instead of discharging grade, so maybe they're in here, which is doesn't matter. I'm just going to pick a manhole, eccentric, 60-inch diameter. I'll go ahead and pick a reinforced concrete pipe since it's existing downstream, and then I would just go ahead and place that. Now, this part, I guess I'll just switch this to a double-winged head wall. Let's just do 36-inch high, and then maybe that's the discharge. So there's like an existing line there, right? And that should hopefully look like how you guys represent it on your plans. If there's any changes to this, then those styles would need to be changed. So go ahead and draw something in there real quick, just a segment of, and let me know when you guys are ready.
Are you having any issues with your screen? Yeah. See, we're having the screen. Your screen is like really lagging, really bad.
Huh. Okay.
We kind of
check something here. So from here, it's really just two different networks. You can see there's an existing and a proposed, and a big part of why we want to have it as its own network is just simplicity for the styles. Like, we were able to assign a parts library to this network that was storm exist. So when all the styles that it laid in were, the existing styles, which puts the content on the existing layers, not the proposed layers, and all that kind of stuff. We were able to put it to an existing surface, not a proposed surface. The other part is that when you export stuff out to that program, the HydroFlow storm sewers, it asks you for a network to export. And generally you want to export your proposed network in entirety. Or if you have a bunch of existing stuff in there, I guess it will work, it will work fine. It's just, it starts to blur the line of what's proposed versus the existing. Where if it's two different networks, it's very clean. So from here, we want to, we're not going to discharge this. We found it in the field. There's this old pipe here. We're going to connect to that. What we can do is just delete this head wall. Just select it and hit erase. And then at this point, we're going to bring this, this whole thing over to connect to that. So I'm going to just drag this pipe over. And you can see here, it won't be able to like connect. It won't be able to suck it in and connect to it. And that's honestly, that's the best you're going to get. It's basically like you have this pipe coming into this one. It's not going to directly connect in like Civil 3D. So you can see I'm going to grab this alignment and bring this alignment over as well. After we have things kind of lined up horizontally, what we can do is right click on these structures and hit add parts to profile view. And then we can just add those structures and that pipe. Right click on it, hit add part to profile view, and then just add those in. You can see them over here. So go ahead, I'll pause here and go ahead and do that, kind of get it lined up here horizontally, and then just add those in over here. Okay. So after that, it's really just the simplicity of lining the two things up. So now that this is an inlet, which is obviously below grade, and now an outlet, we need to bring this pipe down. But in likely scenario, that inlet has hard elevations. So you'll have a top of structure, things of that nature. So we're going to go into structure properties. We're going to right click on plan view or over here, it doesn't matter. And this, where it says reference surface, well, actually where it says, yeah, where it says reference surface, we're going to go ahead and check that to none. And then at none, it's going to follow our, well, you actually didn't have to turn off the reference surface. I'm sorry, apologize. That's what kind of got me held up before. It can keep the reference surface, but down here where it says this rim elevation, we would change that to false. And then this is where you're just going to type in. So maybe this is 594.60. It was some pre-entered or predefined. Actually, 60 is probably not right. Let's say 40, because they're usually sumped in the grade a little bit more. So you're just entering in whatever the survey information is there. So that takes care of the top. So go ahead and do that. When you go into the structure properties, and then turn that reference to none, and then type in the elevation. Okay. So for the pipe itself, there's this tendency to think, oh, well, where are the inverts out and in the structure properties? But the inverts are related to a pipe, not the structure. So that's something you just got to get used to, that when it has to deal with a pipe invert, look at the noun you just said, pipe invert. You didn't say structure invert. I think just in my experience, my brain, and I think a brain of a lot of my colleagues at least, people think that's part of the structure and it's not. And you can kind of see it in the language too. I mean, it's the pipe invert, not the structure invert. Structure invert is in the structure. I mean, if you wanted to adjust that and add a sump, that's in there. So for pipe inverts, we're gonna have to right click on the pipe, either in plan view or in profile. It's the same properties, hit pipe properties. And then right here, you will see starting invert, ending invert, starting crown, ending crown, starting or pipe east, north, all that kind of stuff. You have a centerline elevation as well. So usually have the invert is the bottom of the pipe, crown obviously is the top of the pipe, and these are the insides of the pipe, not the outside. So it's the inside diameter control. And then the center line here as well. Usually we work with inverts, those are at the top. Starting is obviously, since we drew it in the downstream direction, the starting's up top here. So let's say that is at 590, for example, and we'll just set that to there, hit OK, and then hit OK again. And you can see that pipe invert moves up. So go ahead and do that.
Okay.
So next after that, I usually just grab this structure. There's a couple things you can do. Honestly, this invert, you could just go into this pipe properties, type that in, usually set it like a 1/10 or 2 high. If you want to do graphically, you just select both pipes and then you can use this bottom grip and then bring that down to this grip, and that let that other grip suck you in, and that will make these match horizontally. And then from there, you can just bring this up. You can see that 590, right? Because it's right at that gray line here, for the grid. So if we wanted to go up 2/10, we're at a 10 scale, so that'd be 2 feet. So you could just grab the grip. Like if I wanted to move this up 2/10 of a foot, I would just grab the grip. Since this is a 10 extrusion, it would actually be based on the extrusion, what I'm looking at, that's actually 2 feet to AutoCAD because of the 10 vertical extrusion. So I would just grab it, go, make sure if this grip is here, make sure I'm above it to go up, and then just hit 2 and enter, and that will bring it up 2/10. And then if you don't, if you don't believe it or whatever, you can, just a couple things. If this is labeled, you can do that if it's in the existing, or you can go into pipe properties as well. So go ahead and get that set at some sort of elevation. And then you can see down here. Now you can see I brought it up by 2/10 twice. So it should be 590.4. It wasn't exact. So you could just come into here and just type it. So that's I'm actually 0.4 above the pipe going out here. So go ahead and get that set.
All right, we're good.
Okay, so from there, finally, we're just going to label this thing. So you just right click on the structure, hit add label, and well, that's not that idea. You can right click on the pipe, hit add label as well, but that style is just not, that's not exactly right. Well, if you right click on the style, hit edit style properties, you can see it's actually laying down proposed labels, so we need to change that. Now here it's a little tricky. You have to just really focus a little bit, because plan and profile are really close. The ones at the bottom are usually profile, the ones at the top are plan, but then you have sanitary up here too. So you just got to kind of take a double look. We want storm profile exist, hit that, hit OK. Right, same thing for the pipe label. We're going to right click, hit edit, label style. Storm profile exist, hit OK on that as well. And then again here that just needs to be drugged down. So you can go ahead and label that. The structure name, you got to come up with something. You can call this, you can right click on the structure itself here, hit structure properties, have to have a label. And that, see, it's just named structure 7. So EX inlet. They can't all be the same. They can't all be existing inlet, right? So a lot of times we'll number them. Like many times for existing structures, it's just existing inlet, existing inlet. They're all existing inlet, existing inlet. Well, when you're going to label it in the pipe network like this, though, you have to assign it a number or something. You can't have duplicate names within the same network. Now, so go ahead and do that. Go ahead and give it some labels, get them to be the correct label styles, and let me know when you're there. And then change the name to be existing inlet 1 or something, I don't know. Okay. So moving along, what you can do now is say, well, that's, I understand I need to do that, but I don't know, we really want to call this existing inlet. There's a couple options, honestly. At this point, you could just make a label, like a piece of M text, right? And you could place it here, and you could say, okay, what's going to call it existing inlet. Have a wipeout, and then rotate this 90 degrees, and just have a masking. You know what I mean? Like this M text can have masking, and just put it over top of it, and mask out that. Or you could just make a piece of mask to mask out the 1. Or you could right click on this label, hit edit label text. So this is a override feature for all labels. If you click on any label, you'll be able to see that you can hit edit label text. So go ahead and click that. We can pick, this actually is made up of multiple text strings within the label style, so we have to pick the one. And then you can see where it says name here. Well, that name variable means it's pulling out whatever the inlet name is. We could just overwrite that. We could just call this EX inlet and then just hit OK. And then you can get, what's great about Civil 3D, this version is, and this version moving forward, it gives you this warning symbol like, hey, somebody's overwritten the text. So like you would never want to do that, for example, for this. Like if you would right click on this label, hit edit label text, pick this side, with the numbers in it, you would never want to then go into here and then say, oh, Chris said the outfall should be, whatever, 1059 or, you know, some number, and just type that in. That's bad. You should just edit the structure. Don't overwrite the text in there like that. But, you know, for an existing inlet name, you know, no harm, no foul. It's not a big deal. So you got to kind of choose that wisely. I guess I would say when it's naming things, I'll overwrite stuff. When it's a number, you know, I've talked about this before, is any numbers in Civil 3D should be pulling from the model data. You should not be typing numbers in ever again. If it's not coming from the model or the number you're getting is not the number you want, that means the model's wrong. Go fix the model. Then you'll get you'll get your desired number. Basically, don't let the tail wag the dog. You know, the numbers are reporting what the model shows. If the numbers aren't what you like, you just don't overwrite the number. It's like dimension styles. You know, I'm sure you've had that where, you know, you have two pieces of line, it says 12 feet, and that's what the dimensions is. And they say, no, you know, the markup comes back and that's, you know, to make that 10. It doesn't mean just overwrite the 12-foot dimension and make it 10. It means move those two lines so that they're 10. Same concept. So go ahead and practice that with right-clicking on here, hit Edit Label Text, and you'll see that throughout all of Civil 3D for any labels. The reason it asks you to pick which is what, you know, like, why do I have to pick this versus that, is if you go into the label style, like just for example here, and you can look up quick, you can see that this label style is made up of multiple lines or components. So when you right click on Edit Label Text, it needs to know which component you want to edit. You want to edit the line, the top grade, the name, blah, 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 blah. And that's there. So that's how you do that. So go ahead and practice that and just type existing inlet. And I'm going to kind of move on. If you wanted to get that back, I guess, real quick, is you can always hit clear label text, or you can go back into the edit, click on it again. If I wanted to put in the name, the fields are right here. So let me hit that real quick. So these are the auto fields. So I could just grab the text and put the auto field back in. Notice in here with the auto fields, these are the stuff that's pulling from the model. You have these options like preserve the case, make it uppercase, make it lowercase, make it title case. So you can actually, regardless of how it was typed into the model, you could say, okay, well, I don't care how they typed it in. I want it to be uppercase. Or maybe it was typed in existing case. You know, so there's these little sub options. Same here for like structure inverts and stuff. There's, you know, how are you going to do the commas and the precision and what the units are. I mean, there's all kinds of, the big important thing with this is that you click what you want here, set these next, and then hit add. If you just highlight it over here and then change these, that doesn't do it. You'll hit OK and you'll be like, oh, nothing happened. Because this, look at, there's like a big line down the sheet here. You do this stuff, then you hit move it over. So you got to pick what you want, set the settings, and then move it into that black dialog box. Then you hit OK. And that's throughout the program. It's just like this. You know, we're just having to deal with pipe label styles here. So I'm going to hit cancel there. Once you guys have that done, I'm going to, you know, pull up your annotative. So go over to annotative up the top, hit add labels here, and then bring this up. We're going to change this to pipe network. And then we're going to go single part in profile. And then we are going to go into here, and we're going to look at these styles right here. So let me know when you're at this spot so we can look at those styles. Okay, so this is great, but there's somewhat of an issue here, right? Like, this is cool. Top of grade, invert out. Well, what's the invert in? I don't know. Nothing says the, you know, 590.4. What do we got to do there? So there's a couple things we need to do. One is we got to label it. So let me do that, I guess, since I have this dialogue up. I went down this road. We want to do single part and profile. And don't make the mistake of using these entire part in plan or profile. You rarely use entire network plan. That means whatever label you pick down here, when you hit OK and you pick a structure, it's going to label all of them. That's, you may do that once in the job, but that's it. You always have to, I wish these were down below, but you always have to go down here to the single part plan, single part profile, single part section. So I'm going to hit single part profile, and then the pipe label, we have some up here. There's a proposed invert in and a proposed invert out. So it's kind of backwards-ish. It's not, it appears like that-ish. So let me talk through that. We want to label the end of this pipe, right? This pipe. However, that label, so that's where it says end. See where it says end? However, that label is going to be displayed as an invert in, because we're going to nest it into this structure. So that would be a new invert coming into this structure, not an invert out. We already have an invert out. So this is basically a label for the end of a pipe. This is the label for the start of a pipe. So I want the invert at the end. So I'm going to click this one that says end, hit add, and pick the structure. Now you're not going to see it right here. It puts it like in the middle, just because that's how it works for the anchor position. But we can go ahead and grab that. So now we have our invert in, and which is the out, you know what I'm saying? It's the end of the pipe. Don't think of it's the out of the pipe. Think of it's the end of the pipe, which is the invert in for this structure. That's why it's named invert in. So go ahead and pick that. And but I'm still not done. I mean, you can just put this here like that, and you know that's honestly fine for the contractor. And there's some logic to using that, because this is the existing stuff and this is the proposed. Many times we like to have the invert out always be the last thing. So to do that, I'm going to right click on the label, hit edit label style, or I'm sorry. I'm going to right click on the label, hit edit label text, pick this invert out, go over to here and just space it down one. So go ahead and I'll kind of pause here to see if you guys catch up a little bit. Get that label placed, edit label text, go into here and space that down. Let me know when you are at that spot. Perfect. So space that down one, hit OK. Gives you a space. You know, some of this stuff is kind of see where we're going, right? I'm just gonna whoop, and put that right into there. And hit regen apparently. Yeah, there it goes. So with a regen, it made it display. You might have to mess with the display order or something if you have an issue there, but. And that's essentially what we got. Again, these little things don't print. I don't know how you can turn those off. I'm sure there's a way. I haven't explored that, but that's kind of the connecting to an existing structure. You know, there's a little bit of a, it's a workflow. That's what that is. There's no button that shows you all of that. But that's, you know, the workflow to how to do that. Is there any questions on existing structures?
Nope, no questions. So you trying to figure out how to get rid of those orange little warning things?
Yeah, I don't know how to do that.
If you go to, actually it's right on your screen. If you go to the top in the override glyph, it's like 2 from the admin. Yeah, if you can go up there and turn it off there, I think. Probably have to do a
regen.
I'm doing this.
There you go. Look at that. So there you go. That's what I'm used to seeing. Which is, I like the override glyphs because it warns you, you know. But once you've been warned or whatever, then you don't need to see it.
Okay, cool.
You guys feel comfortable on knowing how to label everything? And I mean, that's where it comes to. Everything can be labeled. Questions in that regard?
Yeah, I think we're
Yeah, pretty good. The last thing I want to just hit on here is to go to pipe networks. And if you wanted to label this in plan view, you can just go to pipe networks again, single part in plan. Then there is plan. I think we did this before, but here's plan. This is name only, size. Oh, this is for the pipe. I need structure. So we do plan proposed right here, and this has inverts. So plan proposed with inverts, hit add, pick the structure, and then you can get all the invert data from, we have this labeled already. So you can, and that's something to keep in mind, like you can label things as many times as you want. So this could be a label for this inlet. And then you can do things like, well, I want it to, because people get into situations where it's like, well, I want the invert labels to show up on the detailed sheet, like the zoomed in one, but we have an overall site plan. And I don't want the inverts on that one. I want just the inlet numbers. Well, there's a couple options there, honestly. If it's two separate drawings, like DWGs, well, you could just XREF the model into the overall and just label the inlets in that drawing. Like you can label all this stuff through the XREF. We'll do that here in a second. And then in the blown up site plan, then you can XREF this drawing in and then just put the labels in there. Now, I think that's something that we've had to get used to too. As long as you're labeling with this Civil 3D tool here, the label, and you're not typing numbers. As long as you're not typing numbers, it really doesn't matter where the label exists because all things point back to the model. So when the model updates and the XREF saved and then that XREF refreshes in that drawing that has labels in some exhibit or some other place, these data labels down here, they update. So you can have as many labels and wherever they need to be to get a visual representation of what you want. Now they do have to be in model space. They can't be in paper space. But it doesn't, don't worry about like, well, I need all my labeling in the base file. Well, why? Well, it's too hard to keep track of updating stuff. It's like, well, it auto updates. It doesn't matter. Now, if you're typing in stuff, well, then yeah, maybe you should probably try to keep it consolidated so it's not all over the place. But, and obviously as I move inlets around, these numbers update. The other thing you can do is if everything is in the same file, this is just on a layer, like this is a block. So there's nothing wrong with coming into here and going into your layers dialog and saying, okay, well, I have some labels. That label is on maybe I don't have it selected anymore. The object network text style. Kind of move this thing. I do this operation here. Hold on. Turn that off. Yeah, better.
Email that you sent me yesterday from Cody.
Wow, Doc, can turn that off. All right, so the label is under here. There's nothing wrong with coming into here and hitting new, and then call this object network txt 50 scale. All right, and then close this. Say, okay, at 50 scale, I'm gonna grab all these labels and move them onto that layer. You probably have to grab them manually, whatever. Or lay down one set, and you can right click, hit select similar, and it'll grab them all. Move them to a 50 scale. Okay, freeze that layer. Go back to the other one or have one at 100 scale. Do label all network, the entire network. Grab one inlet, right click again, grab all these, because this is now frozen on a different layer. You get the idea. Basically just use your layer management so you can get, one display in one way, another display another way, so on and so forth. Personally, I prefer to do it just in the base file, in the different files, but whatever floats your boat there. Just keep that kind of stuff in mind. These things up at the top, they're just layers like any other layer. It's the layers that these blocks are going on to make everything work. So like a dialog came up in Civil 3D to rebuild the corridor, but since it was over top of this, for some reason it went to the back, and like I can't get it. I can't click on it. If you have that issue come up, you just need to click on the Civil 3D in the start dialog and then click the drawing you have again, and then it should come to the front. The other thing, if that doesn't work, you go into task properties, like the task manager, and applications. This dialog would be its own thing here, where you just right click on it and hit bring to front, and then that will bring that dialog back up in front. So if you get a spot where it's like, I click on Civil 3D and it just goes ding, 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 there could be like a hidden dialog. It's been in the software like that for a while. It's annoying, but it's not, the end of the world once you know that. All right, so let's kind of reset here. So in the last video, one of the last videos, we had trouble getting the corridor surface to paste into a new FG surface. So we're gonna go fix this up, because I think I've found the reasoning. What you can do with a surface is, at any given time, you can right click onto it, for example, and you can hit create a snapshot. I've never used that. That basically locks it in, and it basically keeps the data locked. So I think the intent is that it's supposed to be still dynamically linked, but it won't update until you hit rebuild snapshot or remove snapshot. Then it will actually start to become a dynamic. So technically you could like do something, take a snapshot, then you could keep working without it updating the surface, like if somebody else is relying upon it. And then get to like another milestone, be like, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and rebuild the snapshot now, and then hit rebuild. I've never used it. Usually people want the up-to-date stuff as you're going, if you're gonna work that closely, but that's what's there. It looked like the corridor surface rebuilt a snapshot somehow, or kind of got disconnected. And our corridor surface we called it our FG because we had some trouble getting it paste, and I think it's because of that snapshot. So let's get that fixed. Let's go into the corridor properties, right click, hit properties under corridor again, and go into surfaces, and we're going to delete this. Like you have it, I think it says FG or whatever, just make this dialog empty. Click whatever is there, hit delete, hit OK. See that whole rebuild thing happen again, so you can just get that dialog back to the front, hit rebuild, hit OK. You should have something that looks like this then, where it's just the site. And no contours. We're going to go back into that corridor properties again. And we're going to make a new surface. This time we're not going to call it FG. We're going to call it underscore core, like I wanted to begin with. We're going to use the style. Let's just give it reference to style, just so it looks a little different. HLS ref2. Then we're going to use the top links, hit add, and that will make it basically that corridor, the contours will be draped on top of all the subassemblies. And just hit OK. We'll rebuild again. Okay, so that should give you some wild contours all over the place. Is that what you guys are getting? So at that point, now you don't have to do this part because we don't want to do this right in this moment because I want to use the catchment tool. But at that point, you could go in here, hit boundary, hit shrink wrap, and it would kind of pull those contours in, so it's only just outside the corridor. We're not going to do that. We're just going to leave it go. So from here, I want to do an FG. So go up to Surface, hit Create Surface. Call this FG since we deleted the FG, and just leave the defaults there. And then after we have that empty shell of a surface created, right click on Edits, hit Paste Surface, pick the underscore core corridor surface, and hit OK. So that's basically you can see here just by the labeling, the label styles, or the surface styles, that the corridor and the FG are basically the same thing right now. That's what I just wanted you to see. At that point, we're going to right click on the underscore corridor surface. Remember, the underscores are kind of like these, they're not temporary, but they're build surfaces. We're going to hit Surface Properties. We're going to set that to No Display. So it's there, it's a piece of data, but it's not, we can't see it. Essentially what we're seeing is actually the FG, okay? And that's how I wanted to do it last time, where you actually paste it in, like our FG is this standalone thing. You can see why, you know, we referenced stuff to that FG, and that got messed up. I think in a, I don't know what happened to mine. I guess it said it got made a snapshot during a recovery. I don't remember doing a recovery, but maybe I did. And, you know, now we had to delete that FG. Well, that just disconnected all our pipe networks from the finished grade. So that's kind of a pain. So we're going to fix that here in a second. So now we have this FG. It's a standalone shell. The corridor surface is pasted into it. So if this ever happens again with that snapshot thing with the corridor surface, it's not going to mess up our finished grade. And we can keep that shell intact. Like in any scenario, we could always just remove this paste and add it back in, or add a new paste back in. The point is we're going to keep this thing kind of clean so that it doesn't go away, so we don't have to re-reference stuff to it. So coming down to here, like I said, it's a little bit of rework now because we took that away. It's not too bad because I can come into this prospector here. I can expand this over. I can hit structures now. Existing is fine, but proposed. And I can look, and the surface, yeah, right here, see? That's reference alignment. Where's my surface? Yeah, right here. See how the reference surface is blank? So that's no good. Now our top grates are not going to automatically, you know, adjust. So I have to select them all. Right click on the header, hit edit, and I have to target them to the FG again. Okay, so go ahead and do that. It does pause. It takes a little time after you do that. Resume recording. So I'm going to hit the drop down here on the pipes, select them all, go to reference. First of all, I always have to remember which one it is. So I have to expand these. Yeah, it's this one for me. Right click on the header, hit edit, pick FG, hit OK. Now there's some other things that are kind of goofed up. Like we sampled a proposed grade on this profile. this grade up here, we sampled that from the FG. When we just deleted the FG, now this, see how it's, now when I click on this thing, it's all little jiggy jags. Well, that made this profile, the line, that made that static. So if I right click on it, hit profile properties, go into my data here, see how it's static? And dynamic is not an option. So if you click on any other profile, you could switch it to static, and then you can always switch it back to dynamic. Well, this lost its FG reference. Like, say, see where it says FG10 surface because that was made from the FG, and you'd say, well, I just remade, there is an FG. It doesn't know the name. Remember the person thing? Like a person's a person. If you kill the person, you just can't make a new person, give them the same name, and it be the same person. It doesn't work like that. You know, once we deleted the FG, everything that was connected to it got disconnected. And in some cases, you can just re-reference the new thing, right? Here, what we'll need to do is delete this profile. This one's no good. I'm not interested in some static proposed grade profile. So I'm going to delete, you know, just click on it, delete it. It's not a big deal that after you delete it, you can go to profiles, hit create surface profile. That was storm align 1, pick FG, hit add, change this to finish grade. So put this down here. It's the same thing we had to do before. On the surface, blah, blah, blah. You guys following me? Okay. Change this to finish grade, hit OK again, because we don't have to make the profile view. Profile view is on screen. You can see it. We're good. We don't have to make a new one. Just hit OK, and this shows up. So the new one shows up. Now when you click on the new one, you can see how it's, you know, when it's dynamic, you don't get all the little options to tweak it because it's dynamic, it's linked. So that happened. The other thing that occurred is our band down here. Like we just made a new profile view. Well, this band was just trying to look for the old one. We have to right click on profile view properties. Go to band. We're interested in this row, the EG and FG. We want to change this, see where it says profile not found. We'll change that to our new, you know, the one we had before that was FG surface 10. You know, it just increments a number. So now this is FG surface 11. So it's a different profile. You have to tell it to look at that one. And now those band numbers show back up. So you can, I wanted to go through that. I think it's a good opportunity for some things to go wrong every now and then, because you can see, you know, how important it is when you create an object to not just delete it if there's a lot of stuff referenced to it. You can reconstruct linking. But if I had a ton of profile views and, you know, it's rework, and you don't want to do that. Like I said, you can make everything link back up. The one thing I didn't talk about yet, and I wanted to, before we do the catchments, I'll just jump into this real quick, is this pipe design thing. So let's hit on that. I forgot to hit that. I want to make sure I get that. So when we laid down this pipe network, it designed itself. There's these rule sets, and they're under the prospector. You know, if I come into here under settings, and I go under pipe networks, it's actually under each thing. So it's pipes and structures. You can see there's these rule sets right here. There's another rule set here. So if I just go in, you don't need to do this, but I just go in to show you. These rule sets are what kind of auto-designed it. It said, okay, give it a sump depth at point, whatever, negative. So like I said before, we always do negative 0.2. Maybe you just want to change your template to have that by default. So when a structure comes in, it takes whatever the surface elevation, it automatically has a negative 0.2 sump, regardless. It tries to match crowns of the pipes. That's good for hydraulic grade line stuff. And that's how it kind of, as we were laying that pipe network down, that's kind of why that pipe network looked like it did. It wasn't just all at zero. Like it kind of followed the surface, and, you know, it kind of had a design to it. This is why it was following these rule sets. Same up here. This is now the pipe. So that was the structure stuff, storm lines, pipes. You can see it's pipe. It's trying to match inverts there. If this is a pipe to pipe connection, sorry. So when it's two pipes coming into a structure, it's going to try to match the crowns. But when it's just two pipes abutting to each other, connecting to each other, then it will match inverts. Cover conditions, slope, that kind of stuff. This is pretty well set. I just wanted to show you where it was at if you wanted to tweak it. If you want to redesign the pipe network at any time, you can do that. Obviously, you can just manually do it. But say there's some big holistic change and you're just kind of still working with the putty in a big, holistic way, you can always come into here. Again, this is one of these pain in the butt tools where you have to hit apply rule, and then it will run the command, but it just runs it on the one structure, which is dumb. And then you hit enter after that, and then it will say, which basically puts you back into command without having a structure selected. And then you can just read it. Select up slope pipe in plan. All right, so I want to redesign the line from this pipe, and it says select downstrip. So I could go just one structure, or I'm going to go the whole way. Now I can't pick, this is from a different network, so I can pick this pipe here because that's in the same network, and then it will figure out the route to get there and just hit enter, and it will reapply those rules, and you should see on the right hand side my pipe network update. So that's always an option available, and you can see it didn't update a ton, but it did update based on selecting that. So if you have a big change in surfaces or whatever, you can always do that. And it's just that, again, that trick. So if you guys want to do that real quick, and I'll jump right in. I want to get into catchments here if we can here. And then I think after today, we're going to leave pipe networks. We're going to be done. So then we have the pipe network, we're going to put it on the plans, all that kind of good stuff. The next thing I want to do is catchments. So if you go under analyze, there are some tools in here to help us kind of get to the next level of a pipe network. You got it all laid out, that's great, but drainage areas matter, and the hydrology. We have that tool now where we can export the whole network, but there's stuff that needs inputted on it, like what's the drainage area to the inlet? It doesn't know that magically. We can go into analyze, and under here there's a catchment tool, catchment area, and you can click on that. So go ahead and do that, go under analyze, catchment area, or I'm sorry, before I do that, you actually want to go down to create catchment from surface, my bad. Click on that, and it's asking you to specify the discharge point. So just pick one of these inlets. It doesn't really matter which. I'm going to pick this one on this side, and you want to pick somewhere within the road area, not just like right up on the curb face. So you want to pick somewhere in there, and then just hit OK. You guys ready?
Yep.
Okay. Gonna name the catchment the inlet inlet name. So go ahead and give it the same inlet name, which is something arbitrary for this lesson. And then we're going to pick the FG, and essentially leave the rest of the stuff the same. You can apply a coefficient here. It doesn't really work like that. The coefficient, this tool is somewhat helpful, but doesn't get you all the way there. So I would just disregard the coefficient, because whatever you're putting in there doesn't matter. You can label them. There's some styles here. You can make them look different. You can. I don't even really have a thing set up. You can have the boundary and things set up on different, like I said, different styles. So you can see the style is kind of simple here. It's just the boundary, the flow path. It's kind of it. They just go to 0 at this point. So there's nothing really set up here. We can get that set up if you need. Flow path, there's only a couple options here. We're going to set it to TR55. It should be there by default. Basically, everything's default. Make sure you pick FG here, and then just put the name in there and have it. Exclusion area is what you want. Hit OK. And that will draw the drainage area. After you're done with that, hit enter. That will attempt to draw the drainage area for that inlet. Okay, it did a pretty good job, honestly. I'm surprised at how well this tool works. It's a pretty good job. It's not exactly true though, right? Because that's not the, yeah, sure, if there was no other inlets, that's the drainage area to that inlet, but there are other inlets. Okay, let's do the next one. Let's go up. I'm gonna go up here on the road, and I'm gonna go to catchment. I'm gonna go catchment from surface, and same thing. I'm gonna pick a drainage area, but I'm gonna pick, like, you can see for when it's an inlet, I'm not like picking the inlet, I'm picking like up here, just because I want, any of that area there to go down to that. Again, have to pick the FG exclusion area. I'm gonna call this I for A. You can see if you want to have your inlets named, and at this point, if inlet names change, it's kind of a pain a little bit, but hit OK. And that will draw the drainage area for that inlet. And you can see why I kind of picked up here, because I really wanted, this is where I picked. I really kind of know that it's this whole area that I want it. I mean, you could go, you could pick also just slightly downstream of the inlet, that kind of stuff. So this is where I'm impressed with this tool. Initially, this drainage area went to the center of the road. But now that I've placed another drainage area, it clipped out and adjusted the old one to take that into account. Now, the tool does start to fall apart a little bit. It's not perfect. Like, it drew this line here, which shouldn't even be there. So it is it's a helpful little tool to give you some general guidance. You can start picking around. I still think it needs some loving to get the full way to what it needs to be, but generally gives you some drainage areas. Many times you're just using this as a reference and then just kind of tracing over top of it and then delete these, or you explode them. Ultimately, to take this any farther, you're going to need to develop the curve numbers for the areas, which has to do with cover type, which has to do with topologies, which is, this whole thing in our scope. There's a whole topology lesson here that can deal with, like, actually getting this stuff down to the nitty gritty is what you need from stormwater. In the catchment areas, though, it is trying to keep track of stuff. There's a whole catchments tab here. You can see the different areas. You can, click on these. It's just a catchment group. So there's some downstream analysis, but honestly, the issue is that the cover types that it's using, this concept where the area has one coefficient for cover type, that's not how it works. I don't know what they're thinking with that. So that's where it kind of starts to fall apart from a hugely useful tool. There is flow paths as well. So you could use the flow path tool. So I can come in here, hit flow paths, hit water drop. Pick the surface I'm going to use. So I can pick this surface, and then it, what's it going to draw it on? You got some options here, and you just kind of pick, and it will kind of trace the, where, if a drop of water hits here, how's it going to flow, kind of thing. It uses the catchments as kind of bounded areas as well. So there's some analytical things there you can use with pipe networks. Let me say that again. So here's a big one that comes up that I wanted to hit this. We did all this work and I told you that, hey, pipe networks should really be in their own file. That grading should be in a corridor model. Sure, they can be in their own file, but I really recommend pipe networks be in their own file for a site of any decent size. You don't have to, it's not hard, it'll be fine this way, but it's too late now, they're in here. And in the past, you'd think, oh, well, I can W block this out. Like say another person's working, you know, whatever, I need to split these apart for whatever some reason. How do I do that? The gut reaction is to W block stuff out, and that is the wrong way to go. We do not want to do that. We want to do a save as. So we're going to do a save as of our file. We're going to call this pipe networks. So just do a save as. Say, I guess you can save it once and just do pipe networks. And there is rework as a result of this. So we're going to, you know, maintain all the content, but the concept of, you know, how to separate stuff, it's essentially you save the whole file as and you start deleting the stuff you don't want. So I don't need to go into exhaustive effort, but we did this save as. We're in the pipe networks drawing. So what shouldn't exist here anymore? Well, these grading surfaces shouldn't be in here anymore. So we're going to delete those. We're going to delete this rendering surface because that's, you know, this stuff is in that other file. The corridor model, you know, how do we delete that? The best way to delete things like that is if you right click on it, you're not going to be able to delete it in Prospector, but if you know, show it, you know, unfreeze that layer that we froze a while ago. You can grab the whole corridor model and just erase it. There's alignments to erase. There's a lot of stuff to erase, honestly. So I don't, you know, recommend going down it the wrong way. Obviously, the more and more you build, but the fact is, you know, if you need to split stuff up, the best way is to do the save as. You can see there's intersection markers, there's all kinds of stuff, and then you just go through and start deleting the old stuff. So go ahead and do a save as. Start deleting the things that are not, you know, to be in there. The only thing we really want in there is the pipe network and the pipe network alignment. That's it. All the rest of the stuff can get blown out. Even the surface, that FG surface, that can get erased. The road, all these centerline alignments, and a lot of the stuff you can right click on and hit select similar. Now you just want to make sure it doesn't snag your, since they're on a separate layer, you should be okay. But if you delete the alignments, that takes care of a lot of stuff. If you grab the these corridor boundaries, you know, these feature lines we made, you can right click and hit select similar on those. That gets them all. You can delete those. These catchments that we made, you can right click on those. We don't need those. I mean, I guess I'm going to delete them just because I want to clean it up a little bit. Yeah, now we're getting somewhere. So you can see by grabbing, you know, a couple minutes of stuff, just using the select similar command pretty efficiently. Right click and hit select similar there. You can see I can delete a ton of stuff just by doing that. Okay. And at the end, I would probably even grab these. Kind of what I want to see in this drawing is just the pipe network. What you can do, what I've done in the past too, is just unload your base file, detach it, but just unload it. And then, the only thing I'm left with is just the pipe network. Okay. So go ahead and see if you can get it kind of narrowed down to that. So I grabbed most of the stuff and deleted, but there's little things that I still missed. You can see under our offset alignments, I must have those frozen or something. So I'll turn my layers on. A lot of times I'll go back through. I'll turn off the, right here. I'll turn off the base file. And then it kind of cleans it up a little bit. You can see now I can see those offset alignments since I had that layer frozen, so I can go, get those on, hit select similar. And then you basically just go over to Prospector a lot of times and just look through here. You're like, all right, did I get everything kind of cleaned out? And yeah, it's pretty much cleaned out. So and you can even go into these sites. Honestly, we don't even need the sites in here. So you could really just right click on these and delete all the sites. It would be fine. So it's cleaned out. Now, like we did before, we have somewhat an issue. We deleted the FG. So, we kind of need that. I know we spent a little bit of time re-referencing things to it, but we're going to have to do that again. The EG is fine because that was data referenced in to the other corridor, to the corridor drawing. So it's still just data referenced into here. So we're good there. But we're going to need to go back and hit open on our old drawing, go into grading. So go ahead and pop that old drawing open. You can have both open at the same time, that's fine. Important to note, when like in this drawing, going back in and we're deleting all the pipe network and that kind of stuff. When you delete the modeled object, the text automatically deletes. So you don't need to worry about like this inlet text and stuff. That will go away when you're deleting the model object, since we're getting things separated here now. Okay, so from here, this is okay, right? We have two separate drawings, but now this FG lives in here and we really need that FG to be available in the pipe networks drawing. So I'm going to go up to the Manage tab and hit Create Data Shortcut. So it's under Manage tab on the left-hand side. Go ahead and do that. We're going to check our FG. We're going to hit OK, and then that will now be available. If you're down here in the Prospector on the right-hand side, you can see the FG is there now. I would go ahead and hit Save on this drawing and bounce over to my pipe network drawing. And then you can make reference of that in the pipe network drawing. So I'm going to save this EG or the grading, go to the pipe network drawing, go into Prospector again, down under surfaces, you can hit Create Reference. Now, what style should we be setting that to? All right, so we brought that in. We set that surface style no display. So it's in here. You can see it under Prospector, but you can't see it in the drawing. I can turn on my XREF again for my base file. And then also XREF in, like say, I want to see those contours. I want to label those contours. I want to whatever. XREF, the grading file. So go ahead and crank your base file back on if you had that turned off, and then XREF in your grading file. After that as well, why don't you go ahead and get your FG surface retargeted by your pipe networks, by your structures and your pipes, which we just did, and also recreate your FG surface on this profile, because that got broke, just like it did before, because we're changing the entity, because now it's a data reference versus it's in the drawing. And then also go ahead and data reference your pipes out of this drawing. We're going to data reference those into our grading file. So you can data reference, you have to make these available for data reference and switch back to the other one. So you can see you got to kind of cross things over. So go ahead and work on that. Let me, ask questions as you go if you have questions. All right, so making that pipe network available for data reference. Note you can make a corridor available for data reference too. That's something kind of new. I don't know exactly how you leverage that. So I've never really done that before, but nevertheless, pipes and surfaces is pretty common. Once you make it available for data reference, it pop back over to the grading file.
Yeah. Okay.
So come back into here, you see the pipe network. Just bring in the proposed. Now on this, you have to pick I don't know why, but you have to pick these, the parts list again. It's interesting because you can apply different styles. So you could have your inlets look like one thing in one drawing and they look like another thing in another drawing. Like you can, and that's the same for surfaces and anything else. It's kind of more of the same, but that's always was interesting to me. So you hit OK. The only downside with this methodology is, I wonder if we could have addressed it right there. I don't know if I've ever tried that actually. Is that the pipes show in plan view now in this drawing. It's kind of that no display thing again, right? Like, why can't I, now I have the same thing in two different base files shown. It kind of violates, I got all my pipe network XREF'd in here, but now I'm showing my pipes here and they're also shown obviously in the pipes network base file. So the reality of this kind of setup though is that you're rarely ever X-referencing this grading file into like a plan sheet. What we typically will do, the workflow I've seen that works pretty well is you usually have a layout file like this design one, right? That has like your, building layouts and stuff like that. Usually we'll data reference your finished grade surface out of your grading file into that. In that case, you would not have it set to no display. You would set it to the appropriate display style. That's where you can label it if you like labeling in your base files, add the contour labels, add spot elevations, that kind of stuff. And then when you XREF this design file into a plan sheet, you get that data. And then your pipe networks, you would XREF this drawing too because you got to see the pipes. And then you have the profiles. You will XREF the grading file, but not really for the plan view content. You're not really showing the plan view port. You're showing the profiles. That's what you're really interested in here. So it's a separate plan sheet drawing. That's just for profiles. So you're not really even looking over at this content. And then you're not seeing that the doubling up with stuff. Like the only trouble it would have is if in plan view you were trying to XREF in the grading file and the pipe network file, technically you get two things right on top of each other. It's not, and honestly, it's not really a problem. They're referenced, the stuff's connected to each other. It's, it's a data reference, so it's going to always line up and be consistent with itself. It does take up more PC resources, but it's not like a surface. A surface takes up a ton of resources. Pipe networks, not really. So it's not, you can see where it's like, well, that's problematic because you're not using the no display. You always said to use the no display. It's like, well, it is, but it isn't. So there's this gray area, and I just wanted to explain that a little bit. The reason we don't set the pipe networks to no display in this drawing is many times when you're working in this file, you're going to want to right click on it and plant, or click on it and plan, so you can get these tools available to add it to the profile, or just for right clicking ability here and hit draw on part, on profile. You'll notice when you add this stuff, so if I right click on this pipe and hit add part to profile view here, it will show and all that fancy good stuff, but I will not be able to edit it. So I can label it, I can show it, I can even apply different style. I can say, hey, use different style, but this stuff here, all those editing options, that's all going to be grayed out because it's a data reference. So you can see I can actually change it, not that it would matter, to a different reference surface, but that's about it. So we don't need to go through adding it and labeling it, but generally this is the file setup that you'd want to have, that I would recommend. Like you do your grading in one file, you do your pipe networks in another. Grading is generally a thing that you want to have in its own file. Pipe networks, they could live either spot, but if I had a site like this, where we were doing a road like this, a site of this caliber, I would definitely have this stuff separated. If I had like a little gas station, I just would put it all in one file. I wouldn't worry about all this separation stuff. Hopefully that helps thread the needle a little bit. Any questions on any of that stuff and re-referencing? Kind of did it two different ways there.